Hello out there. We're on the air. Got a hair on this camera, I think. Yep. Arnie boy. All right, are we live? Oh yeah, we're back on Zapstream. Right on. Apologies to Zapstream and company because I think I blamed them yesterday, but it was because my balance was empty. So it was my fault. Just like today. I'm 10 minutes late here or more, and my fault. But so today's going to be a little bit different episode, I would say, because I had zero prep time this morning. We had a call about Superbacked that started at 7 a.m. my time and went on for quite a while. So I had zero prep. I just rinsed my hair quickly. We got a backwards hat today, and we're just going to see what happens. I got a couple different things to talk about, but this is going to be an opportunity for people. I like doing one of these per week usually, where we just kind of don't really have a big agenda and we just kind of roll with it. So if we got any burning topics and questions and stuff, just throw her in the chat and we'll get to them. So good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Hopefully you can hear me. I see Zapstream is working good. We got a Zap already. Look at that. Zapstream is actually working. I've been on sats.gg lately, but I'm actually on the Zapstream and I can see the chat. I can see the Zap from Josh. So we're full Zaps today. And we got Arnie's wallet, of course, here as well. Right there. If you're on YouTube and feel like sending some Zaps, some Sats, you can. So, well, you know what? Let's start the show with our disclaimer today. Seemed like people liked that one yesterday. Although I changed it slightly because it was a little bit too aggressive. We don't need to be that aggressive. We can be kind of aggressive on here, but not that aggressive. So I'll start saying this at the start of every show when people are kind of making their way in. But this is the Bailey Bitcoin journey, the daily Bitcoin journey. This show focuses on actionable, logical discussion for Bitcoiners and for future Bitcoiners. It's important to note that you should verify every single word that comes out of my mouth. We do a live show here every morning without a script, which means that I'll probably say some things that are incorrect and some stupid shit as well. And I will never tell you what to do. I will only share my thoughts and my experiences. Therefore, this is not financial advice. However, if Bitcoin isn't your largest holding right now, then you are either uninformed or an idiot. But that's why the show exists, the Bitcoin journey, because this stuff is not well known. It's not second nature to anybody. We're just kind of going through this whole thing together. And we do not have any paid sponsors on the show, which means I can say whatever I want, which is important to me. I don't want any sort of influence over the words coming out of my mouth. So if you've learned anything or laughed during any of the shows, you can send some value back using the QR code. Or if you'd like to support the channel and just keep me coming back. There have been some very significant supporters of this show, and I will be forever grateful for that support. And some in the chat, you know who you are, and that's it. So let's get her going. Let's get her going, folks. We got Clean Your Machine, the first comment of the day. Good morning. We got Bodie in the house. Morning, my SUBSTACK and friends. And you notice that I didn't ask people to unsubscribe because, first of all, nobody really listened to me. I think there was about 5 people who watched the show yesterday and unsubscribed. So I'm taking a different approach now. So scrap that. Don't subscribe, don't unsubscribe. If you're getting value from the show, make sure you have the notifications on and show up here every morning. That's what I would say. Off the script, off the cuff. Killer 76, good morning. Timber Crasher, look at this. We got some Pokemon. Sold some Pokemon cards last night to buy some Bitcoin. I was surprised I had some cardboard art that had value. You know what? On that note, I've been thinking about this. This thing has been sitting here by my desk for, I don't know, a long time, too long. This guy. I don't know if you can see it or not. Austin Matthews, rookie card, 9.5 graded. It sells for about $700 on the open market. And the shitty thing for me is that I was going to sell this a long time ago and I was going to buy Bitcoin with that. And I know that if I sold this today, I would get about 1/4 of the sats that I would have got when I wanted to sell it. So the point of that is that whether it's Pokemon cards, whether it's hockey cards, whether it's anything around your house that you no longer use, the longer you hold on to it, the less Bitcoin you're going to be able to trade for it eventually. So that's a lesson for you and a lesson to me to get off my ass and get this card listed. Also, though, the other part of that is that if there are any Toronto Maple Leaf fans out there who would be interested in this and have a lot of Bitcoin that they want something to do with, reach out, because I'll give you a very good discount on it if you're willing to pay in our favorite currency here. Could be a good Christmas gift for a Maple Leaf fan on your list. So again, these ones sell for about $700, and I would probably take about 500 in Bitcoin, or even less. So reach out. I actually had the idea to do like one item per week that I could like either buy at a thrift store or something and just like a one of one and sell for sats on the show, kind of like a live auction. I thought of that, and it might come in the future. As people know who have watched the show for a while, my grandpa was an auctioneer. So it'd be something similar to that. We could do it once a week. We could call it the auction. I think that'd be really cool. Buck52, good morning. Jason, good morning. Tom's in the chat. Good morning, Tom. Time for coffee and contemplation. That's a tough one to say. Coffee, contemplation. Josh says, accept bots. They can unsubscribe. Hey, Josh, in both chats this morning. Look at that. What a guy. What a guy. Yeah, it was more so the reason of like, again, I don't want to lose sight of like the purpose of the show. That's kind of the whole thing. When you get onto YouTube, you get 1,000 subscribers. It took me like 2 years to get 1,000, and then like 6 months to quadruple that. So it goes fast, and I just don't want to lose sight of like the mission here. It's not about subscribers to me. This though, like when people send in sats, that's like the subscribers for me. That's what keeps me coming back. That's the only thing that, is important to me other than helping people here. But like subscribers it's a metric of the old system, essentially. It's an illusion. It's a complete illusion. So the point of that is that that's not something that we need to focus on. That's not something I need to focus on. We need to focus on the message here. And if people are enjoying it, learning, getting value from it, then they will keep showing up. That's it. There are just so many YouTube accounts out there who have like 1 or 2 very viral videos and they had like 1 million subscribers come over, but then they just lose, they fall off because the message is lost. So that was kind of the point of it, more so than anything else, is that it's not a focus for me. So I'm not going to tell you to subscribe or unsubscribe. Do whatever the hell you want. That's the moral of the story. Pipeline Podcast. Hello. I'm glad you put 2 L's there. Rob's in the chat. Good morning, Rob. Parker, good to see you, man. And yes, Rick says, don't forget to show your appreciation for all this great free information by smashing the like. Appreciate that, Rick. And Mark, look at that. That's a new face. My best friend growing up was named Mark. It's a good name, although we called him Toad. All right, we got more bots here showing up. Pipeline says, good question. Do you think this comment was right? I read a comment saying the main reason that Bitcoin is so volatile is because people value the dollar over Bitcoin. You know what? I actually made I made a video on the 365 course yesterday talking about Beanie Babies. Because we had Rachel Maddow, which was the winner, the recipient of the Dipshit of the Day award yesterday, as she compared Bitcoin to Beanie Babies. And then I found this older video from Catastrophe, somebody, I don't know his name. He's the president of the Minneapolis Federal Reserve. Kashkari, I think his name is. He would win probably Dipshit of the decade. But anyways, he's sitting there trying to compare Bitcoin to Beanie Babies as well. And I think that the main thing that people have to keep in mind when you're thinking about like trends and fads and bubbles and things like that is like they come and go. Sports cards a couple of years ago, they really took off. They've just gone down and down over time. Some of them, come back, but overall as the industry, it hit a peak and then it popped and then it crashed essentially. And Beanie Babies have done the same thing. There's been a lot of things, the tech bubble back in 2000. There's been a lot of things like this, a lot of times in history where there's been a trend like Beanie Babies. But the difference between Beanie Babies and Bitcoin is that Bitcoin has crashed 4 times, I think over 80% downwards. Crash. And for trends and bubbles, that's the end. That's kind of where the story ends. It never comes back to where it was. But Bitcoin has recovered all 4 times and hit a new all-time high on top of that. So this isn't a trend or a fad or a bubble. It's basically just like a totally different way of doing things that we're trying to figure out the price of. That's what it is. And I think that Bitcoin is insanely underpriced when you compare it just to gold and when you look at the hash rate of Bitcoin. But then when you actually objectively stop and look at this and you say that, all these countries are getting involved, all these big entities are getting involved, this thing has a chance of being the global reserve currency. It has a chance of being the unit of account of the world. It has a chance, not that it's going to be for sure, but if we're measuring things in Bitcoin and there's only so much Bitcoin, that means that you could take all the houses in the world and divide it by Bitcoin. And that's what a average cost of a house would be in Bitcoin, not in fiat. And that's the kind of part we're going through right now where the market's trying to figure out what this thing's worth. So if it does, in fact, become the world reserve currency that everybody's using and everybody's storing and transacting with, then there's no limit on how high this thing can go. Very simple calculation. You can do this yourself on your calculator. Look on AI, say how many houses on Earth exist, how many houses are out there. And that's only one asset class. You do that with land, how many acres are in the world. You do that with commercial buildings, how many commercial buildings are on Earth. How many ounces of gold. You take that and you divide that by Bitcoin, the total amount of Bitcoin. So that's kind of what we're going through right now, where the market's trying to figure out what this thing is worth. And if it gets to that point, which I think it will, then all the cards are off the table. Like this thing at 80K today, 8 million would look like a joke compared to what this thing's actually worth when you actually look at it like that. But nobody does, because nobody really understands exactly what's happening here. And I don't even understand myself what's happening here. This is bigger than any of us can even imagine right now. So it's not because people value the dollar over Bitcoin. It's because people don't really know what Bitcoin is worth yet. And we're just kind of going through that time right now where we're figuring that out. The market is trying to figure out what Bitcoin is worth. Does that make sense? I don't know. Josh says, that's a nice card, Joe. I've got a Crosby rookie card. Ooh, that's a good one. Same grade, and it's a Beckett. I'm keeping it as much as I value Bitcoin. I like other things too. Me too. And, even with this Austin Matthews card, like, I just don't really like him. I know it's going to be worth a lot one day, but I just don't really like Austin Matthews. So I'm just trying to hang on to the things that I really love, and that's it. So if there's any Leaf fans out there, like that's a no-brainer. But yeah, it's kind of cool. I have an Ovechkin one too that's actually ungraded, And kind of I don't know. That's a whole nother topic, but let's let Zapstream know that we're live here, since we're back on the Zaps today. Okay, so let's keep moving here. We got another question here from Pipeline. Do you think there will always be an over-the-counter for Bitcoin, despite how valuable and incredibly rare it will be to sell in the future? I don't. I don't think that Bitcoin exchanges will be around forever. I don't know how long that takes. It might be a decade. It might be 50 years. It really depends on how fast we adopt this thing. But there will come a point where the exchanges won't, they'll be useless, because what are you going to exchange it for? Dollars? Once most people figure out like the difference between dollars and Bitcoin, nobody's going to trade their dollars for Bitcoin anymore. You're going to be able to obtain Bitcoin. Once we get to a certain point in Bitcoin, you're going to be able to accumulate it through work, like you work for somebody and they pay you in Bitcoin, or, adding value to the world and you get paid in Bitcoin, or you trade like a real asset, like a truck, a house, a cabin, land, something real. That's the only thing that people will accept for Bitcoin. And there's not going to be a need for an exchange at that point. I don't think over the counters will exist. I don't even think like Coinbase will exist. They just won't. I think banks will outlive all of these different companies, different exchanges, but there won't be a need for an exchange, because nobody's going to be exchanging dollars for Bitcoin. Fiat dollars anyways. It might be a different story, but so let's play this out. Like, let's say that if my theory is correct, that the fiat dollar disappears eventually here in the near future, probably within the next 4 years while Trump is president. That's kind of been his goal for the last 10 years, is to get rid of the central bank, the Federal Reserve. So let's say we get rid of that and the US issues a treasury dollar, which I think will be backed by Bitcoin. In that case, still, I think that everybody's going to have apps on their phone. Every one of those apps is going to have a Bitcoin wallet built into it. And you're going to be able to swap atomically between the US Treasury dollar and Bitcoin, between Litecoin and the US Treasury dollar, between Tether and Bitcoin. You're going to be able to swap all that in your phone based on what you need it for. Bitcoin's going to be the thing that you store your value in, but you might, depending on what you're buying and who you're paying, they might want something different. I don't know why they would, but again, this takes a long time for it to play out, but that's kind of how I see this in the future, is that you'll be able to swap between anything. Plus, Wall Street is going to have all the shares available to do the same. All the shares are going to be tokenized. So you'll be able to go between Bitcoin and Apple shares and Tether, depending on what you need to pay for. There won't be a need for an exchange. Right? I hate eBay too. Sorry, we're a little bit backed up right now here, but I hate eBay too. That's why I'd like to sell it. I might actually post it on NOSTR today and see if anybody is interested in buying. But anyways, Jay says, I've been living like a peasant and stacking all the sats. Me too. Me too. Can't believe I've had a PayPal account for over 20 years. How do you know that? I'd like to see how long I've had mine too, because I've been on eBay for quite a while as well. And I don't know if it'd be 20 years, but I think it'd be kind of close to that, which is crazy. Anything outside of like 10 years just seems like it's hard to believe that it's been that long, whether you're talking like being graduated or like since you saw a friend last or whatever. Just like, it's hard for our brains to think the fact that it's been longer than 10 years on anything, for me anyways. Francis, good morning, man. Great to see you here. Utah State fan says most subs are bots. I don't think that's some for sure. Some for sure. And I do agree with this. The less subs, the better the content. It would be very interesting to me to look at actually how many subscribers I have versus, or how many subs are bots versus like real people. I would honestly say that the majority of people who subscribe to my channel are indeed real. I'm sure every YouTuber says that, but I mean, I don't have that many. So I think that mine's, it's possible. What is going on here? Caleb Brown, get out of here. Never come back. See ya. What the fuck are you talking about? What are we talking about? Patrick, good morning. FOMO after the election, hurting now, but hodling. Yeah, boy, Jake. Don't worry. Everybody does it. Everybody's done it. If that's the worst thing that happens to you in your Bitcoin journey, just give it 4 years and then you'll be, it won't hurt anymore. Got to compound it. You got to play this out over 20, 30, 50 years. Beanie Babies are still better than the dollar. That is true. That is very accurate, actually. What do we got here? Patrick says, Europe EZB about to launch CBDC Euro in October. Man, Europe's in trouble. Canada's in trouble, but like Europe seems to be like 10 times worse somehow. Every day, Rachel Maddow is a front runner for dipshit of the day. 100%. 100%. Utah State fan, you still planning on going to the Bitcoin conference in Vegas? I am. I'm still planning on it. I haven't booked anything, but I'm still hoping to go. And actually, I'm going to be golfing there in a tournament, hopefully. There's a tournament on the Monday of that week that somebody asked me to play in. So hopefully I'm going to be golfing. Tuesday as well, maybe. So if anybody's in the area, if anybody's going to Vegas, let me know. And maybe we'll do some golf somewhere in Vegas or just cruise around. But yeah, I'm planning on going. Yeah, exactly. Jason says crash multiple times, $2 trillion asset class. Exactly. It's the other thing too that most people miss is like no asset has ever got to $2 trillion asset market cap and then failed. So I think people are finally starting to realize now that Bitcoin's actually not going away. So this next part is going to be people trying to figure out what to allocate towards Bitcoin. Not necessarily at the retail level or individual level, but like countries and states and funds and companies and businesses, they're trying to figure out how much to allocate to Bitcoin. They know now, I think, that this thing isn't going anywhere. They can no longer continue to ignore it. They just have to figure out what the proper allocation is, and they have to find somebody to help them do it. That's the other thing too. Like there's a few people even in this community here, I think, that would be like in the 1% of the 1% in terms of value in Bitcoin. And that's the other thing too. And I was late to the show today, about 10 minutes late, because our Superbacked meeting went about 40 minutes over time. But anyways, the point is that as we were talking through the client with him, I realized how valuable this information really is right now. It's valuable not only to like Bitcoiners who are here and understand the need for this, but think about the people who are still yet to come. And so if you're somebody out there who's like really interested in Bitcoin, just keep learning and keep studying, because not only are you going to increase your conviction, and you're going to be able to stomach the highs and the lows much easier, but like there's going to be so many opportunities within Bitcoin to help people and help business owners and help your municipality buy Bitcoin. Like there's so many opportunities here in Bitcoin. And so there's going to be different levels. And I think the people who are at the top right now, it's just going to be like continue to be even more valuable over time. So, I mean, that's the thing. That was one of the things that I mentioned in the meeting today is like, yeah, you could go through this thing yourself, right? Like when we're talking about Superbacked and it being like the best way to protect your Bitcoin, because you have to keep in mind that you could have as much Bitcoin as you want right now. If you don't have that in 20 years, none of that matters. If you're not securing it properly and how you need to be securing it, it doesn't matter how much Bitcoin you have today. But when you're going through this and you're using something like Superbacked, yes, it's available for anybody to use. It's free. And it's verifiable source. You can go in and check it out yourself. And actually the guy we talked to today had already gone through that. He'd already practiced with it. He conceptually understood what the need is for Superbacked. But what I said is like, I'm the same kind of way. Like I like trying things myself. I like learning myself. But when you're dealing with something like Bitcoin, you need to have the best security, the best team, the best everything there. It's a whole nother layer. It's a whole nother level of the standard has to be so much higher than everything else in your life. So it's important. And having a guy like Craig on the team with me, like that's kind of what I said to the guy. I said, like, having a guy like Craig throughout your whole journey here is worth 10x of what we're charging here just to have Craig on your team, pretty much. Like, people don't understand how valuable this information is. And people like Craig really are when you're trying to navigate this stuff, because they still see the dollar value in terms of what it's worth. They don't see what it's going to be worth in 10 or 20 or 30, 100 years from now. So that's kind of, when we're talking about any of this stuff, it's important to take the stuff seriously, because I called this episode the greatest opportunity in human history. And I really very much believe that wholeheartedly. There will never be anything like Bitcoin again. There's never been anything like Bitcoin. And the only thing that will be better than Bitcoin is Bitcoin now. It'll just be a slightly improved version of it based on the new threats and attack models that come up with as this evolves. But there will never be anything else like Bitcoin. And I think if people really understood that, they would take things a lot more seriously, instead of focusing too much time on the price and too much time on, the concerns. Just understand that if you have a piece of Bitcoin right now, like, you're going to be in a very small class of people. And I just don't think that people really understand that yet. I don't even understand that. Anyways, BitBilly, good morning. Good morning. Great to see you, man. How's BitBilly today? Our largest, I would say probably largest donor, fattest Zap for sure that we've ever received. I think 2 of them were from BitBilly. Tom, not sub, not a bot. Tom took my advice seriously yesterday and unsubscribed, which is hilarious. But anyways, I was happy to see that only about 5 people took my advice yesterday. Rick says, not a bot, just ask my mom. Well, that's the thing. It's pretty easy to spot a bot in here. Just based on the things that they say. It just doesn't even make sense. Like, what the bot over in Zapstream right now said, John McAfee, aka Q, said Bitcoin is going to zero. Trust John McAfee and Trump. Like, they don't make any fucking sense. Like, what does that mean? I just don't understand it. What's the point? But that's a problem. That's the world we're moving into here. It's just going to be all, whether you're watching a video, looking at a picture, in a chat room, until we can find a way to get rid of the spam, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. So thank God for Bitcoin. Buck52 says, I see the IMF is really against Bitcoin. Interested in seeing how that plays out. Well, of course they are. Bitcoin is designed to eliminate dipshits like the IMF. Tom says, we don't know what we don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it too. Kind of with the Superbacked thing, it's a little bit more, advanced. When you're going through that level of security, when you understand and see the need. And that's kind of what was mentioned in the meeting today. The guy's like, I've got to a certain point in Bitcoin where I don't even trust multi-sig. And that's a whole nother, level of Bitcoin and security. But for newbies and for people who are newer to Bitcoin, there's a lot to know. And even going through the 365 course, I'm seeing myself just how many different things that you need to be aware of when you're first getting into Bitcoin that nobody's there to teach you. But then as you evolve and you get serious about it, like, you could go through the whole process, and if you do one small thing wrong, it totally defeats the whole purpose. Or you go at this thing yourself and you think that you can take it on. And then after 5 or 6 months, you're kind of like, you keep procrastinating because it's hard. It's hard. And then you go through all this time, you take all this, go use all this energy looking into it, figuring things out. but then you don't really have anybody there to hold you accountable and just kind of give you that last push to be like, you're on the right track here. This is the small thing you need to do. And then, you do it instead of aborting the mission and just wasting all that time. I've done that countless times with different things in my life where I thought I can kind of take it on myself. And I got to the point where I was just so frustrated. I just put it aside, and then I never really thought about it again. Whether it was the right decision or not for me, that's the disconnect there. Pipeline says, I'm probably less than a year new to buying Bitcoin and researching it. It's so funny whenever YouTubers saying just get 1 million sats doing a $5 a day DCA since December. And I don't know after the Bitcoin reserve. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's the other thing too. Where it's hard with the show here because I know that there's Bitcoiners in all different stages right now, right? And I actually had a meeting with a guy yesterday, and I like talking about these meetings because I think there's something to be learned from them without giving any information away or names or anything like that. But the guy I met with yesterday, he wanted to get into a multi-sig. And I was like, he told me approximately how much Bitcoin he had. And I just said, like, don't worry about it right now. Like, don't waste any money on a multi-sig. Don't waste any money on my services here. Instead, understand where we are, understand how expensive it's going to be in 6 months from now, and just get as much Bitcoin as you possibly can right now. So depending on where you are, like, that's kind of how you should be dictating what you do here going forward. For some people, you already have a significant stack, and that's what you need to be securing. For other people, you have a smaller stack, and instead of worrying too much about like a multi-sig or Superbacked, you should just be buying Bitcoin right now while you still can at these prices. So it's impossible to like give blanket information to everybody here because, again, everybody's at different stages, everybody's got different holdings. But yeah, I mean, it's only going to get harder to stack, especially when the US makes their first Bitcoin purchase. It's pretty much over at that point for the average person to accumulate any sort of real amount of Bitcoin. And we won't really see that until it actually happens. It's like there's been a lot of people comparing this cycle right now to 2017. And I was listening to Marty, I think it was, Marty Bent talk about it last night. And he was talking about the similarities between 2017 and today. And he was kind of saying, except this time feels kind of different because I have no idea where this thing's going to go. There's just too much uncertainty right now. And although I wasn't there in 2017, I would imagine that right before the big run up of 2017, people were kind of saying the same thing, right? It's always easier to look back and say, well, yeah, of course. Of course it shot up in 2017. Of course it shot up in 2025. The US government started buying it. Of course. But like before that happens, it always feels like uncertainty because you never know for sure. So looking back on 2017, yeah, made sense. And I'm sure a year from now, we're going to look back and say, well, of course it went from 80,000 to 800,000. Like, why wouldn't it? But before it happens, nobody really knows. And it always feels uncertain. It always feels like anything could happen. But we know what's going to happen, right? Like there's really no other way around it at this point, in my opinion. M. Vincent says, how can transactions be permanently recorded and viewable to anyone? Yet we don't know what nation states or whales make moves. Because the transactions, the amounts are recorded, but there's no name beside it. Like I could send a Bitcoin to Baked Potato right now on chain, and it wouldn't say that Jor sent it to Baked Potato. It would say that BC1 Z578, sent it to BC1 BC, whatever. Like there's no names attached to it. So that's why we don't know who it is because it's transparent in terms of the amount and the transaction itself, but there's no names on there. So unless the name actually comes out and says, or it gets leaked somehow, we have no idea. And when you think about think about a country like Russia. Think about a country like Russia or China or the UAE, who I believe have been buying Bitcoin for a long time now without telling anybody. But think about it. They just hire people. They hire people within the government and they say, call this over the counter, call Caleb and Brown, buy some Bitcoin. They don't know it's going to the Russian government. They just know it's going to this person. They don't know who he's working for or she's working for. But that's how I think it's been happening for the last 4 or 5 years without anybody really realizing that that's what's happening there. Anyways, I missed a couple comments over here in Zapstream. Nick says our boy Mark Carney was pushing for a worldwide CBDC that encompasses a mix of fiat with for stability. Canada's in good hands. Yeah, we know the one rule around here is that we don't talk about the Canadian government because I get derailed pretty quickly and I lose my cool. So yeah, Mark Carney, great guy. Super human being with a very democratic process there when 100,000 people get to decide the prime minister for 30 million people. Is it 30 million? No, I don't even know how many people are in Canada. Anyways, awesome frog, another frog. I thought it was awesome frog. Good morning, awesome humans. So that's where I got that from. And Letha's over in the chat. Good morning, Letha. And we got Baked Potato who zapped 21 sats as well. Thank you, Baked Potato. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the NOSTR chat. All right, what do we got here? Superbacked. So here's the thing. Here's what I wanted to mention to people today. I think that at some point in the future, I'm going to do like a full show. It might be like half an hour, but like a full show walking through people what Superbacked is. And I'll do my best. I'll probably consult with Craig first to make sure I don't miss anything there. But I'll do my best because, you know, I make a 2 or 3 minute clip. I've shared on YouTube and I probably have 15, 20, 25 people email me every time saying, I want more information on Superbacked. But it's hard for us to like communicate that in an email because there's just so many things involved in the process. So I think that if I kind of walk through the exact process, walk through what it would look like for your average Bitcoiner and what it would, you know, what the setup is like. And I think that'd be very beneficial. And I would take kind of the questions that we've received so far, tie it into that, and then allow for like an open discussion in a forum where people can kind of ask questions on the fly. That's kind of what my plan is. It's just much easier for me to communicate it in voice versus an email. I can kind of go through the email and expand on it, but you can't really get a full picture of what this thing involves unless unless we're talking about it. So that's kind of my plan. I want to do a show on Superbacked. And then for anybody who's like serious about it, we can do like a webinar or like a follow-up for free. Obviously, we're not going to charge for it, but I'll get Craig there as well. So it'll be like the first step just to give some information. If you're interested, you can kind of, we'll have a separate private webinar type deal for Superbacked. And it's just a much easier way to, kind of get through it all. It just makes so much sense. That's a problem. And as Utah State fan says here, looks interesting. The days of clutching to your 24 words need to be over. That's what I'm saying. Like it's a very archaic way of thinking about this. And I did it wrong for 3 or 4 years. I still have some of that part of my process that I'm very uncomfortable with, having 24 or 12 words in my house. I'm doing my best to get rid of that as fast as I can. But it's just not something that I was even aware that was a problem, right? Like having 24 words laying around in plain text. It doesn't matter how secure this thing is. If you have 12 words in your house that somebody could just put into a wallet and take your Bitcoin. So it does make total sense to have something like Superbacked. So Superbacked essentially just creates 2 of these. Instead of having one secure device and then 12 words in plain text, it basically creates 2 of these. And according to Craig, and I would agree with this, the Superbacked is actually more secure than something like a cold card. Storing a passphrase in your head you come up with makes more sense. So we also don't advise people to store it in your head. It combines with a passphrase that you could memorize, but that's what you put on Steel. So if somebody were to come across that in your house, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4 words, it doesn't look like a Bitcoin private key. It just looks like a couple words. That's what you put in Steal. That's what you put into your inheritance document, not the 12 or 24 words, which basically is the key to your Bitcoin. So yeah, there's it's funny. The last couple of people we talked to, they're like, how are you guys going to tell more people about this? Because it just makes so much sense. And we're like, well, that's, I'm working on it. Give me a year here. And because when this thing becomes more mainstream, then it kind of takes the reliance off Craig and I. If something were to happen to us, you could still go to a bank or a notary or a lawyer and kind of get the full recovery that way as kind of like a last resort. So this thing will become more mainstream. It's being adopted already by banks and notaries in Canada. And so it's coming. It just, everything takes time. Hey, morning, Ian. Good to see you. Have you missed much? Not really. I mean, we're 40 minutes into this. We haven't even got through the mempool yet. So we've just been bullshitting here, man. We've just been bullshitting. So here's a question. I'm interested to hear what you guys think about this. I saw this question though. Juanito, is this one actually live? Yes, we are live. The majority of them are live. We just do I do a replay of the show for the people who can't make it to the morning. So we do a replay show every day at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And I hang out in the chat usually if I'm not doing anything. And I don't know. It's a good chat. I've reached out to a lot of people. A lot of people have, reached out to me after just being in the chat, answering questions. It's pretty effective actually, without having to redo the show at night. But yeah, the question I had is like, I saw an email in my inbox this morning from Bitbox, which is a hardware wallet manufacturer, I believe. I think there's a couple big Bitcoin channels that are sponsored by Bitbox, but they reached out to me and said that they want to sponsor my show. And like, what's the play there? Like Passport did the same a couple months ago, but it's tough. It's tough because if the product is good, and I think that I'd rather just kind of partner with them instead of like them sponsoring me and giving me money every month. I think if the device, the equipment, the product is good, I'm happy to promote it on here. The thing that I'm just trying to prevent on this show is being influenced by any companies. Because as soon as somebody writes you a check, they now essentially have you by the balls. Essentially. So with something like Bitbox, I mean, I might just reach out and say, well, we can do like a partnership, like a referral code, whatever. Like I'm happy to do that stuff. I have zero issues with that. It's just that when people are cutting a check and saying like, okay, here's what you have to say. Here's the script. If you say anything we don't like, you're going to be in trouble. That's what I don't want. And there's been a couple companies who have reached out and said, we'd like to sponsor you, but you have to do a disclaimer at the start of the show. And I was like, you know what? Beat it. So we'll see. We'll see. There's going to be companies, I think, like Chroma now that I don't know if I showed you guys this light or not, but this is the new daytime light that I got going. It's pretty cool. Hold on. Let me see if I can turn it on here. I don't want to make it too bright. Oh, yeah. That's pretty bright. So it actually goes red. You can see it there, eh? Red. So you put that on at night. And then you can change it to white for the daytime. It's just way too bright for me. I sit in front of a window anyway, so it's too bright for me right now. But that's holy. I feel like I'm in a tanning bed right now. That's Chroma. Super high quality. I was very impressed with that. But that's a company that I'm interested in working with. I use their products every day. I love their products, but I don't want them to like sponsor me. I just want to be able to, tell people about them if I like the product. And then, if we have a referral thing or whatever, that makes more sense to me. But anyways, I see a couple zaps here. Daniel's in the chat. Daniel and I are looking at some Airbnb options for Vegas to stay together. So if anyone's looking for a place, we might have to do a little bit of screening though, because I don't know how comfortable we'll be with just strangers in our Airbnb. But if you're going to Vegas, reach out and maybe we'll just get together for a beer or something. I think that makes sense. But anyways, thank you, Daniel. 888 sats. And we had a couple here to Arnie's wallet, actually, right here. Somebody sent in 388. Somebody sent in 888. And somebody sent in 88. Oh, I love it. So thank you. Thank you for those. Actually, on that note, before I forget, I'll can I get it? I'll try to get it later. But I actually have a discount code for the Chroma lights. And the cool thing about that, I haven't really talked about this. I wanted to make test out the products first. But the cool thing is that while I was testing these products, I saw that Jack Dorsey actually shared this company on his NOSTR page. You can go back and look for it. It was about a couple weeks ago now, but he made a post about Chroma. So if you're into like the red light daytime stuff, they got a bunch of really cool devices on there. It's a little bit expensive, but they're a lot higher quality. I've noticed. I've used a couple different ones now, and these ones are solid, like good quality. So anyways, I got a 10% off code, I think, if anybody's interested in that from Chroma. All right. I've heard of Caspa before. Yep. I know a lot of people not a lot of people, a few people who mine Caspa. And I know that they have a lot of regrets right now in terms of utilizing all that energy for Caspa instead of Bitcoin. Caspa's, it's kind of cool in theory, but it's not going to be around for very long. So if you have any Caspa, I would say swap it for Bitcoin while you still can, while you can get anything for it. Utah says, multi-sig doesn't make much sense to me. If the code is hacked somehow, all wallets will go down regardless of the manufacturer. If the code is hacked, I'm not sure what I mean, I agree with you. I do agree with you there. But are you talking like the Bitcoin code itself, like got hacked? I don't know. Let me know if you're still around, because I kind of agree with you there. Multi-sig great, but it's not like the end of the line. Storing physical device somewhere like you are with gold defeats the entire exactly. And that's really the beauty of Superbacked, is that you can, again, have zero trace of Bitcoin on your house. You guys are going to get tired of me saying this, but you can keep zero Bitcoin, zero devices, zero words in your house while still maintaining full ownership of your keys without having to trust anybody. That's kind of what you want, I think. Race Junkie says, I bought my first Bitcoin in 2011 and sold it for 10x a few years later. I'm 67 now and I've been hodling since 2009. How do I leave my keys, or how do my Bitcoin to my sons without giving up the keys? That's a great question. That's a really good question. How do I leave my Bitcoin to my sons without giving up the keys? So you'd need to have like a proper inheritance protocol in place. You'd have to have a will. You'd have to make sure you have something in place, like a trust, where it actually avoids like the probate system. Because if you were to unexpectedly pass right now, I don't know if you're still in the chat or not, but if you were to unexpectedly pass, and first of all, the key to your Bitcoin, would your sons be able to find it? I don't know, because it's hard to really give it to them without fully giving it to them, if you know what I mean. The other part too there is that if you don't have things in place, upon death, your assets go to like an estate. If you don't have things done properly, they go through the courts. That's who decides who gets the assets. So part of the whole thing is having a solid inheritance plan in place, setting up a trust, making sure that whoever needs to have access to that, they have limited access. And then there's like a kill switch kind of involved there, where, if something were to happen to you, that's where the lawyer gets involved. That's where we get involved with the Superbacked stuff. And that's how everything's kind of, goes from there. So it's just important to have something in place. And part of the Superbacked does have an inheritance plan built into it. That's kind of the whole value that we provide with the service. So, I mean, if you're interested, Race Junkie, you can just shoot me an email. Just put Superbacked in the the headline, and we'll set up a call with Craig and I and figure out what the best way to set that up would be for your sons without having to give them the key to it right now. Definitely ways to do it. And it'll probably advance too. Like you can already time lock things. You can always do, it's programmable money. I think that's what a lot of people discount Bitcoin for. Like it's programmable money. You can do so many different things with Bitcoin. And there's going to be so many different services that pop up within Bitcoin in terms of like time locks, in terms of like disappearing seed phrases over time. It's just going to keep getting better and better. But the important thing is just to have something in place where it doesn't go through the courts and make that information public. That's kind of what you want to avoid, number one, in addition to like the security aspect itself. Cleaner Machine says, I never thought it would be this much education and no end in sight. I find it extremely fascinating. Can't pull away because I see the light coming. Isn't that true? Isn't that true? Like I see Craig over in the Zap stream. Zap 2,100 sats for Arnie insurance. Thank you, Craig. Very, very generous, my friend. But anyways, the point that I was getting at there is like that's kind of the point. Like Craig and I had a meeting this morning, 7 o'clock my time in the morning. And I had zero. It went on for over an hour. I had zero time to prepare for today. But like how many other subjects could you come online and just like have conversations with that's like really relevant and, people are interested in, where you have no script, no plan in place, no preparation. You can just kind of show up, and we've been going on for 51 minutes now and it's felt like 5 minutes. It's amazing. It's just such a crazy, I don't know. It's hard to explain. Ooh, a single BitAxe found a block yesterday. Really? I wonder if it was mine. Could you imagine? Actually, it's happened before on the show where I checked it, and I was like, I don't know if I'd be able to mask if I actually saw 3.125 Bitcoin in my wallet. I don't know if I'd be able to hide that properly. So I don't even know if I should be checking this. Where is it here? Addresses. Come on. No. Damn. One day I'm going to get that. Letha checked immediately too. I didn't even see that. That's interesting. All right. What else do we have here? Tom says, what's stopping a BIP from adding personal information? The community miners. What's stopping a BIP from adding personal information? Oh, like to the Bitcoin transactions. Is that what you mean? I mean, there'd be no real benefit to putting our names on there, right? Like, I don't think anybody would ever go down that road. That would be way too much. Like it's kind of a lot right now within Bitcoin to like how transparent it is and how public it is and how many things can go wrong if you're not doing things properly. This is one of the scenarios that I play out in my own head of just like how this thing could go. Like, let's say that there's somebody out there, like a baby boomer, a bunch of wealth, a couple $1 million, they get some Bitcoin, in 2025, and they have it there and they just have it in a wallet and everything's good. Like nothing really happens to them, even though they don't have like a multi-sig or Superbacked or anything. It's just kind of there. And so all of a sudden this thing, maybe they get one Bitcoin, they got a couple $1 million, but they just decide they want one Bitcoin, right? And so they keep it in their wallet here and they don't really know what they're holding. They see the value go up and maybe Bitcoin becomes worth $1 million per Bitcoin. And so they have this Bitcoin in their wallet that they've had for maybe 5-10 years now. They just kind of have it there. They maybe added more to it, but then they send a Bitcoin transaction from that wallet, from that address. And they don't know what's wrong with that. They're just sending value to somebody. Maybe they bought a new motorbike and somebody wanted like 50,000 sats for it. So they send them 50,000 sats from their Bitcoin wallet, but they don't really realize that they can trace that back and see that this guy has like 1 or 2 Bitcoin in his wallet. And just because he bought like a motorbike for 50,000 sats and, thought he was, using his Bitcoin like you should, that he exposed this whole Bitcoin stack and he didn't even really realize it. And all of a sudden, maybe this, whoever got it, they start telling people, and then he's the target of the town. Like, that's a potential scenario that could play out here as this thing becomes more valuable and people aren't really up to speed with how to handle their privacy, how to handle their UTXOs, how to handle their private keys. Like, we're just so early in this thing that there's going to be so many things that go wrong within Bitcoin. And, the point of the show is to help people hopefully avoid a lot of that stuff. Just to get thinking about it more so than anything else. Anyways, we got a couple more zaps here. We got 8 sats, we got 88 sats, and a 50 satter to Arnie's wallet. You can kind of see Arnie in the background. He's snoozing. He's here. He showed up for work today. We got Donai over in Zapstream. Morning. Spaceman. Good morning, stackers. And Donai, good morning. Good morning, folks. All right, we got lots of questions in here. I just saw one come up though, because I want to share this. What's the chroma code? All right, let me get this quickly. Where the hell is it now? It's a problem when you talk about things before you're ready to talk about things. This is the kind of stuff that happens. I shared it on my NOSTR the other day, but I'll get it here. Just give me 10 seconds. It's worth it. Whenever you're buying something, you should always be looking for like a discount code. Always. Whenever you're signing up for something, get a referral link, because you always get like either dollars, Bitcoin, something in return for it. And especially if you can get a discount code as well. So here it is. Let me share this quickly. Chrome is great though, because I do a lot of work at night. Usually a couple of days a week. I'll work from like 7 till 9. And the blue light, if you're not careful with it, you can be up all night. So with this light that I got a couple of these lights. Bridge has one in her office now too. But honestly, I turned that thing on. This is no word of a lie, and this is why I wanted to test this out before I talked about it on the show. But I turned that red light on at night, and it's supposed to like calm you down, relax you, kind of get you ready for sleep, because it kind of offsets your blue light here. But I instantly felt like kind of just more relaxed, which is weird. Because when you're looking at a screen at night and it like keeps you really awake and alert, this really, I don't know. So definitely not for everybody, but if you have the means and the financial means to be investing in it, there it is. I just threw it in the chat. And for anybody who's watching this, I'll put it in the show notes for you as well later. Okay, one thing I did want to watch here, I had this video loaded up. Well, we'll watch this right now. But this is an interview on what Bitcoin did with Matthew Pines. I really like Matthew Pines. He's very, very intelligent. He's one of the nerds in Bitcoin, like a financial nerd, like the legal side of things, the financial side of things, but still gets Bitcoin. So here they're talking about repricing the gold to buy Bitcoin. So I was really interested listening to this conversation, because there's a few things that he said in here that I didn't really think of or understand myself. So I'm going to share this with the crew here today. It's about, I don't know, 3-4 minutes. So we'll turn this on. So this is Matthew Pines on what Bitcoin did, talking about the gold. Repricing the gold, potentially buying Bitcoin with it.
Track where the Lummis bill, the Bitcoin Act, is also budget neutral in the sense that it doesn't require new debt issuance, and it doesn't take any existing appropriated funds. It essentially instructs the Fed to remark the value of our gold certificates that are held at the Fed, but they're owned by the Treasury Department, to market. And so they're marked right now at $42.22 an ounce.
Can you explain why it's marked at $42? Is that like a hangover from Bretton Woods?
It's anywhere from the 70s. When was the last time I think they made that adjustment? Post the Nixon shock kind of recalibration. And it is, in a sense, it's an accounting item. The government just hasn't basically after the Nixon shock, the government basically didn't want gold to be important anymore, right? Because the whole point was it kind of got us in trouble, right? The fact that we weren't able to make good, essentially the de facto sort of dollar gold standard that broke down, right? And then Nixon basically said, no, sorry, we're going to a sort of free floating standard. So they kind of aggressively wanted to kind of downplay the role of gold in the national system. So the U.S. government was basically like, pretend that gold isn't worth much, right? And so they just pretended that value is still $42 an ounce because it doesn't matter anymore, right? There's no redeemability. Gold is just a barbarous relic. Gold is not a monetary metal, not a monetary metal anymore. We're going to petrodollar, free floating, currency standard. So it was a sort of a matter of psychological operation and sort of politics that we just want to de-emphasize gold as a monetary metal. But it's always been there, right? Obviously in our vaults as assets.
Is it? Because we haven't done an audit on it in over 50 years, and there's a lot of rumors floating around about shipments of gold back and forth between Europe and America at the moment.
That is a good
what's going on there? Why is all the gold going from London to New York?
Well, yeah, so those are two different questions. Right? One is whether it's in Fort Knox, and the other is what might be in sort of Manhattan vaults of JP Morgan. And I know on that part, right, there's been a lot of gold moving from London to New York. I think that was engineered by essentially Trump people, by when they were threatening tariffs on Europe and the UK in particular, which is a major London gold market. Those tariffs, could apply.
Get the gold out of there, so it's not a bargaining chip.
I might butcher the technicals of the market, but essentially, if you wanted to be able to settle physical gold, right, you now have to price in a new potential premium if there's going to be tariff in the future. And so futures, right, then basically become more expensive for physical settlement of gold out of London and cheaper relative, to do the same sort of trade in New York. And so your sort of your arbitrage and sort of your, the risk is to move it, right, and now becomes cost effective to move that gold physically to New York. To sort of, do that arbitrage and also to evade that potential sort of tariff, sort of risk premium. So that basically was like a sucking sound, just pulling physical gold out of London into New York. And there's also just speculation is like, okay, like was the tariff threat, issued to sort of engineer that financial arbitrage that would then trigger that physical flow of gold as a means of just getting the gold into the U.S. Again, this is all part of like the, whispers of a much broader global economic reordering or kind of these major shifts that are afoot on the global stage and realignments geopolitically that Bitcoin may play a role in at the same time. And so, yeah, it's important not to see this. It's important to see this Bitcoin executive order like in that larger context, right? Like Bessent is doing all this other stuff, right? He is trying to, engineer a global reordering, Plaza Accord, Mar-a-Lago Accord, whatever you want to call it. But I will say, right, the overlap, and Zoltan has written about this. I won't go into the details and, violate his copyright. But in one of his recent sort of private letters to his subscribers, it was all about basically the SBR and the Lummis bill in particular. Because he noted in the history of sort of the 20th century, America has occasionally rug pulled, right, the monetary system and just decided to revalue gold, right? And so in the 30s and then again in Bretton Woods and then again in the 70s. And each time we did that, it was an act of Congress that gave the Treasury Secretary the legal authority to revalue those gold certificates, right? And, he was looking around and it was like, well, if we wanted to play this game again, right, to pull this move again with a gold revaluation, you need law, you need the legislative authorization. And at this current moment, the only bill that would give the Treasury Secretary that authorization is the Lummis Act. Is the Bitcoin Act by Senator Lummis. And so, reading the tea leaves, it's kind of like, maybe there's like a deal here, right? Which is the Bitcoin stuff is almost like it's like a fig leaf or it's like a smoke screen, right? To the international market, right? Because like if you passed a bill that was like gave the Treasury Secretary explicit authorization to revalue gold, everyone would sniff that out, right? It would be like, why they just pass that bill that says they can revalue gold? They'd be like, like we're about to get rugged again. We need to like. Whereas if you put it into this Bitcoin package, it's just the crypto thing. It's just this kind of like financial engineered kind of like. It's not.
It's just it was a promise to his base.
Yeah,
and
it's not a real thing. It's just kind of
right. Those stupid crypto. It's Beanie Babies. How dumb. Rachel Maddow was calling us Beanie Babies.
Exactly. So that's maybe a bit too like 20-dimensional chess, but it's not implausible to think that there is other reasons, right, for the government to think about Bitcoin as a strategic asset and why something like a Lummis bill is an important thing to support. But again, this is a complicated game here.
Well, isn't the game theoretic basically like just at a broad level? And I first heard this from you, right? So like. Basically, we demonetize gold, which is held by our adversaries, while monetizing Bitcoin. And if we can successfully swap those things, then we own the future and our enemies own the past.
I mean,
Right.
if I was like, evil mastermind here trying to like hook up the play, it would be you do the gold play first. Well, so you establish the executive order SBR start position. It's kind of this vessel, right? And maybe you fill it up a little bit, but
it's small potatoes.
Right? It's just, but you're sort of setting the context for what you want to do next. Then you do the gold move, right? So you've got all this gold certificates. Maybe you've got some gold, who knows? But if you just have the gold certificates, it doesn't really matter if you've got the gold. These are just like ledger entries, and it's an accounting trick to essentially credit the Treasury General account with maybe 800 billion, maybe $1 trillion of fresh reserves. Essentially, it's like a gold QE or gold certificate QE. The Fed is now essentially crediting the value of those gold certificates at the market value, and then just moving those account credits into the Treasury General account, which is now spendable by the Treasury Secretary, right? That's not authorized funds that within to borrow any money. It's now a slush fund essentially of $1 trillion that the Secretary can do whatever he wants with it, basically. And then you can put that in a sovereign wealth fund, do domestic reinvestment, do all the sort of industrial stuff they want to do, and maybe even buy some Bitcoin with it. And then you could be like, all right, now we've revalued the gold certificates, we kind of got what we want out of that. Now maybe we'll actually take the physical gold and maybe we'll sell that. Slowly. Maybe we'll do some deals. And you try to squeeze as much liquidity out of those, maybe that legacy hard asset that you want. And then you do the phase 2 into Bitcoin, right? When everyone now thinks you're going to be doing this sort of gilded Bretton Woods 2.0 kind of thing with maybe gold kind of being recentered as a monetary reserve asset in the global system. And then Bitcoin is kind of the like sneaky end play, right? Where China, Russia, the sort of Eurasian autocrats, they've been building these gold reserves for many years. And if we do this sort of gold reset, they probably would win, right? As well, assuming we have the gold that we think we have. If not, then we would definitely probably not want to do that play. And then if we run the Bitcoin play though, like before them, then we would win. So there's probably a lot more complexity to that, right? Than that sort of simple scheme. But it's kind of a remarkable point where we now have like certain things happening that pushing that are like early are like data points that you're plotting on that line, right? If you just like sketched out that hypothetical line and you're like, all right, well, let's see if reality like matches up. Well, an executive order that basically is very specific about creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve, essentially instructing the Secretary of Treasury and Commerce to find ways of acquiring Bitcoin. And then you see a pivot to supporting the Lummis bill, right? Which is that the next big move. We'll see, how much that gets momentum. Those would be data points that you would start connecting.
Oh, as an early Bitcoiner, it's obvious. Like to me, we're in the end game now.
This episode is also brought to
Oh, Danny boy. I love the new podcast, but they have to drop the Ledger sponsorship. They have to drop Ledger. Danny, I doubt you'll ever watch my show here, but like, come on, man. Let's get rid of that one. Let's get rid of the Ledger sponsor. It's a tough one. Anyways, I really liked what Hoddle said there. Actually, I forgot he said that, but he said we're going to let our enemies own the past and we're going to own the future. And when you think about it like that, when you think about these different data points that Pines was talking about there, that's exactly how I see it. And I think that that's the disconnect for the average person. And I'm not saying I'm above average in any stretch of the word, but that's the difference, I think, between the average person and the person who has the ability to kind of see things, see a vision of things and how they could play out. Right? Because the average person, they kind of see things just that day and they wait for these announcements and then they react to that. But the person whose ability to take these touch points and these data points and say, okay, well, this happened and then this happened. So what's like the next logical step there? And I think when you have the ability to do that, that's the whole opportunity. That's the arbitrage in life. When you can kind of see things before other people, when you can put the pieces together before everybody else can. And so this isn't like an announcement that they just do a press conference on and say, this is like what we're doing here. This is the plan. We're going to be doing this over the next 5 years. It's like, okay, well, here's one announcement. And then over here, here's another one. And you have the US doing this. You have China kind of doing the same thing, not telling us any information. You have Russia doing the exact same thing, the UAE, and all of these kind of pieces are moving at the same time. But when you just kind of take a step back and look at like the bigger picture, like this thing only goes one way from here. All roads, all of those pieces, all of these roads all lead to Bitcoin. I think that's the moral of the story. And just because it hasn't happened yet, that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. That's kind of the takeaway from that video for me. I see a couple questions here. Parker said the shipping cost is brutal. So that would be, I'm pretty sure Chrome is in the US, right? So that would make sense. These things are like high quality, like they're not just cheap plastic. So it probably costs a lot to ship. So probably in the US, it makes the most sense to be using something like Chroma. That's again, they're the brand that Jack Dorsey was promoting on NOSTR, which was a pretty big boost for, gave me some reassurance there. But Jason also says EMR Tech is in Canada. So they must have like a similar kind of devices and products, and they're in Canada. So if you're in Canada, you don't want to pay like the shipping, potentially like the tariffs or the import charges, then Jason suggests EMR Tech for the same kind of stuff. So Chroma for US people and beyond, probably. EMR Tech is in Canada for Canadians on the show. Bodie says, if the scenario Matthew Pine suggests is taking place, what kind of play does the UK, EU, and China have to head this off, assuming they are watching this closely? Well, I mean, the UK and the EU just seem to be going in totally different directions here. Like they're coming out and they're pretty much like, I think the EU understands that they have no bargaining chips. I think that they understand that they have no real assets other than just the complete illusion that everybody's been living in for the last 100 years. I think they're starting to see that they have nothing. And so what they're doing, instead of like trying to strategically do this, is they're just going after their citizens as hard as they can. They're extracting as much as they possibly can from their citizens. They're being as intrusive as possible on their citizens. I think Canada's kind of going through the same thing. China's a different story. Like there could be things happening in China that we never even, we will never know. I think with Russia too. China, Russia, the UAE. UAE is a little bit different, but they keep their cards very close, and they should. They should. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the gold and all the countries like India who have all this gold, all these other countries who have been using gold as like their kind of like reserve for the last, 1,000 years. As Bitcoin kind of overtakes gold and everybody wants Bitcoin, what happens to gold? That's the other thing too for me, is like when one or two of these influential countries start dumping gold and start trading their gold for Bitcoin, that creates a whole supply onto the market, and there's no buyers for that now. Some of these countries might pick it up, but like, why? What are you going to do with it? When the US is leading the charge here and saying, this is the future, are they going to like go more, like put more chips on the table, buy more gold? I don't think so. So kind of like my theory and my kind of vision for how this whole thing plays out is that I think that everything's going to be repriced by Bitcoin. And I think the prices of a lot of these things are actually going to fall, whether we're talking houses, whether we're talking vehicles, gold, everything's going to like fall in terms of what I'm trying to say is that Bitcoin might not have to get to $100 million per Bitcoin. I think that everything's just going to cost much less in terms of Bitcoin, if that makes any sense. It's kind of hard for me to articulate what I'm trying to say here, but what I'm essentially trying to say is that everything's going to be repriced in Bitcoin, I think. So I don't know. Who knows? Like, what the hell do I know? Like Trump. Who the hell knows? Right? Daniel says, I'm really digging Fountain for the stream. That's kind of cool. I want to check it out myself. I've never watched anybody on Fountain before. So anybody who's kind of new to the channel here, you can actually watch the show now on, it doesn't even show up for me here. Never mind. Oh yeah, there it is. So if you're on Fountain, I like how mine just says Jor. On Fountain, you can see at the top, you can see the live streams now. So not only can you listen to podcasts every day and get free sats, but you can watch this stuff live now, and you can connect through a NOSTR chat. I can see the whole chat here. Pretty cool. The video's a video of me showing Fountain on Fountain. Shit. Okay, do we have anything else? I don't know. Shout out to the people who have been buying. We've got over 20 orders on the new hoodies, the new We Are Right About Bitcoin hoodies. I was blown away by that. I knew we'd sell some when I got some like that I could wear and show off on the show. But like in the first day or two, we had over 20 orders of the new hoodies. Pretty impressive. That's a solid community, solid support here. I appreciate everybody who ordered one. And they are coming from the US. I'm going to get some in Canada here. So either way, you shouldn't have to pay any sort of import on them, because depending on where you are, we're going to send them from that country. So keep that in mind. Anyways, let's give away some Bitcoin here from Bitcoin Well. How does that sound? Let's get my email off the screen there. Let's get this one buzzing. So get your Lightning wallets out, point it at the screen, and the first person to scan this QR code is going to win some sats today. Are we ready? Are we? Arnie's sleeping. He's not ready. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. These sats are courtesy of our friends at the Bitcoin Well. The best place to buy, sell. Oh, look at that. 2,100 sats. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Lucky person today. We busted our coldie here. We just got to talk about it, I guess, sometimes. Talk about the coldie. Bring it to life. So some lucky person just won $2,100 in the future. Congrats. Hold on to those sats. Pass those ones on. Pass them down. Hopefully somebody got it now. If not, I'm going to snipe them. Somebody got them. Buggers. You buggers. Just kidding. That's for the community. Those are from our friends at Bitcoin Well. So if you're not using them yet, make sure you check out the Bitcoin Well. Give them a shot. Buy a little bit of Bitcoin and see what the experience is like. I guarantee you won't be using anything else. Although there's some solid other exchanges too. Strike, I love. Jack Mahler's, big fan of them. River is another one. But Bitcoin Well is definitely one that everybody should have in their repertoire. They don't hold any Bitcoin. That's a nice thing. You send them dollars, they send you Bitcoin. They don't hold your dollars, they don't hold your Bitcoin. It's pretty cool. And if you're anybody like me who values that, then you should try out the Bitcoin Well. So you can go bitcoinwell.com. Look at that. Right here. bitcoinwell.com/Jor. Get some free tosses. And I missed some comments here, so we'll get through these comments and then we'll hit the road. Oh, $1.52 got him. Right on. Congratulations. All right, let's see what I missed here. Anything? It's a good question from Dat. It's always shocking the difference between the wages of a previous generation and the generation now. Do you think when we are all earning Satoshis, this will change? I mean, I don't know. This is how I think about it. This is how I think about wages. So you have to understand that as time goes on here, if you want to be earning Bitcoin, if you want to be accumulating Bitcoin here, as time goes on, as the price of Bitcoin goes up, you go to work, you do the exact same job. Whatever you're doing today, if you did that exact same job a year from now, but Bitcoin has gone 2 or 3x in price, you're earning about 33% of what you were earning today in real terms. So that's why I encourage everybody here to act with some sort of urgency here. Get as much as you can, work as hard as you can right now, because these days, as time goes on here, your wages are going to go down in Bitcoin. But the flip side of that too is that the Bitcoin that you have accumulated at that point, you're going to be able to buy way more with. So even though you're actually earning less at that time, whatever you've accumulated up until that point, you're going to have much more purchasing power to buy things with. Your net worth is going to be higher. And whatever you need, everything's going to be cheaper for you. So that's the nice thing about it is, again, even though your wages are going to go down in real terms over time, your purchasing power is going to increase. So you're going to need less. But that's why you should be doing everything that you can right now to get as much as you can, to work as hard as you can, and to build up your Bitcoin stack as high as you can. Well, of course, looking after your foundation, the most important part of that whole process. Mark says, started my journey with buying the ETF 8 months ago. Look at this. This is like the perfect, this is how it should be. Mark started his journey with the ETF 8 months ago, switched to self-custody a few weeks ago by throwing $200, dug forward check into Bitcoin. Thanks for all the great info. That's how I see this whole thing kind of, rolling out, both individuals and companies over time. Because there's a lot of people out there, a lot of very wealthy people right now who are holding these Bitcoin ETFs. A lot of businesses and companies who are holding these ETFs. But eventually that's all going to flow into like them holding the keys themselves, because why would you trust somebody? Why would you pay somebody a fee every year? Why would you trust somebody else to hold your Bitcoin when you have the ability to do it yourself? And the only thing between then and now is education. All of these different businesses are going to have to hire teams specifically dedicated to managing their Bitcoin private keys and their UTXOs and their different, on-chain Lightning, Liquid, all these different things. Every company is going to have like a team dedicated to their Bitcoin stack to protect that. It'll take a lot of time, but that's like the natural evolution here, is that people will start cashing in their ETFs and holding Bitcoin themselves, just like Mark, which is really exciting. It just takes some time. Hey, Lox Guy, good morning. Good morning. Jay says, passphrase is always plausible deniability. Personally, won't be putting that onto Steel. It really depends what your setup is. Like with Superbacked, you actually put your passphrase on Steel. But it doesn't really connect anything. So if anybody came across that and tried like taking your cold card and putting your passphrase or your Superbacked passphrase, like it's not going to do anything there. So the thing that you keep, the thing that you put onto Steel within Superbacked is your password that either you create or you use like the BIP39 word list to generate. And that's what you put onto Steel. Because if somebody were to come across that in your house, it doesn't mean anything to them. 1 word, 4 words is different than 12 or 24 words. So they might not even know it has anything to do with Bitcoin. That's the beautiful thing about it. Buck52 says, Tangem, reach out for a sponsor. I've been a negative sponsor of Tangem. I think I've lost some sales, so I don't think they'll be reaching out to me anytime soon anyways. Cleaner Machine sent in 888. Thank you, Cleaner Machine. That must have been one of these ones on the on Arnie's wallet right here. Nova says, can you explain how it works real quick? Superbacked, that is. I mean, I've talked about it quite a bit. I got a couple different videos on my channel. I'm planning to do like a full show dedicated to Superbacked and how it all works. But essentially, like very, very quickly, is it acts as like a secondary hardware device. That's kind of how I think about it. So you have like one of these, like a cold card or a Jade or a whatever, you have a hardware device, which is good, very secure, need a pin. If somebody came across this, they can't do anything with it. They could try, once they try about 10 pins, it bricks them and it just shuts down. So this is very secure. But the problem is what people back this up with is 12 words, 24 words. You put that on paper, you put that on Steel. that's a huge vulnerability in anybody's house or in your security model. So what Superbacked does is it basically encrypts those 12 or 24 words. So then you have this very secure device plus another very secure or more secure device storing your backup phrase for it. And you can geographically disperse it and kind of eliminate all trace of Bitcoin from your house. So it's a pretty big deal. We're just lacking kind of the awareness and education around it. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Jan says, as a retired boomer, would I do well to go all in Bitcoin and ignore the other assets? Good question. I'll show you my advice for you, Jan. I have a spreadsheet specifically dedicated towards this question. And we'll bring it up here real quickly, if I can find it. Next. There it is. Okay, so this is actually this doesn't apply just to baby boomers. This applies to people of all ages. And I actually shared this spreadsheet on Bitcoin Generations a couple weeks ago. So this is my very simple way to figure out how much you should be allocating to Bitcoin. Oh shit, hold on. Got to reformat this just slightly. Okay, let me bring this up quickly. So depending on what age you are, that's one component of it. But the other thing too is like how much knowledge you have in Bitcoin. And keep in mind here, this is specifically for self-custody. So if you're somebody out there who's a baby boomer and you have a lot of wealth, this doesn't include like the ETFs. This doesn't include holding Bitcoin. It's at a place like Caleb and Brown. This is like taking self-custody of your Bitcoin. This is kind of like the spreadsheet that the model that I have for figuring out how much Bitcoin you should be allocating into Bitcoin. So let's use a baby boomer here, 50 to 70. We'll go with this one. So I kind of have different, it's all weighted based on age, right? Because if you're 10, 20, 30 years old, you got a lot of time, you got the compound effect on your side. That's where I say you should be allocated 100%, assuming you have the knowledge of Bitcoin in order to secure that Bitcoin. Somebody who's 70 plus, you want something that's a little bit more accessible, I would say. It's not more liquid, but more accessible, right? You don't have to worry about you don't have to worry about selling it, the tax requirements of it, all that kind of stuff. You want something that you can easily pull liquidity from. So let's focus on the baby boomers here. So I gave the baby boomers about a 60% weight, and it's all based on your knowledge here and your age. So let's say that you're a retired baby boomer, and you got about, I don't know, let's say you've been in Bitcoin for quite a few years. You have a good understanding of it. Let's say you have like a 70 out of 100 knowledge level. So even at that point, I would say you should still only be allocated about 42% into Bitcoin. Maximum. And if you have less knowledge, if you got about, you're figuring things out, 25%, you got to ask yourself that question, like out of 100, how would you rate your own knowledge level within Bitcoin? Like how much understanding do you have? How much conviction do you have? How much knowledge in terms of like your security? And you can always contract this out. You can hire a team to help you with this and kind of bump that up a little bit. But let's say it's 25 out of 100. At that point, I suggest like 15% into Bitcoin max. Right. So if you're 20 years old and you're like a Bitcoin expert, then yeah, put 100% into it, because why not? What do you have to lose at that point? Like, what are you going to save in fiat? Why? It's not a good store of value. You want something at age 20 or 30 that you can protect your time and energy and store that in, like a battery. That's what you use Bitcoin for. So you don't need, you can always go get another job, get a job, pay your bills, and then save everything in Bitcoin 100%. But if you're lacking some knowledge there and you don't really know what you're doing, then yeah, don't put all in Bitcoin, because then you're just going to lose it and screw things up. So it's all kind of based on your age and your knowledge within Bitcoin. That kind of helps allocate based on your portfolio size. So keep in mind, this is like your total investments. If you looked at like your net worth statement and said, these are all my assets, this is kind of the allocation based on that. So it's going to be like a different amount for everybody. It's not like 1 Bitcoin or 5 Bitcoin. It's like how much of your portfolio should you be putting and allocating into Bitcoin based on your age and your knowledge level in Bitcoin. So Jay says, happy to be in that bottom bracket here. So yeah, 70, that's, and it really depends too. There's a few other factors in here for like the 70 plus, because I would say that at that point, your Bitcoin is pretty much like your legacy. That's what you're going to be passing on to your kids. That's similar to like, accumulating land or like a cabin or something that you can pass down to the next generation there. So that's kind of what that is. You might spend some of it, but for the most part, you're going to be using like a high interest savings account to kind of fund your month-to-month living costs at that point. And the Bitcoin's going to be kind of like your legacy that you leave, right? You probably don't have any plans to spend Bitcoin. Oh, the top rather. Well, never mind. But anybody who's 70, that's kind of like, what you're worried about mostly is like your legacy. What's going to best store the time and energy and the value that you've added to the world. And there's nothing better than Bitcoin in that case. But if you don't know what you're doing, then you gotta watch the allocation there. Does that make sense? Hope so. Good morning, Alan. Haha. Is that code for good morning? Haha. Oh, I left Zapstream here. Or what were we laughing at? Anyways, Jet says, does anyone think about hiding 12 words and say a short story or essay? Yeah, so Jet's like, this is something that I thought about a lot. Like literally every night I would lay in bed and think about like, how can I increase my security, or how can I make my security setup better? Like I thought about the craziest things, like hiding it in a shaft of a golf club. And those are great. Like that's absolutely like the first starting point for some people would like, put your 12 words in a book and go to that book every day for like a month. Make sure you know where it is in there. The problem with that though, is that you can't pass that on to the next generation easily, right? Without them having access to it. But if you use something like, a multi-sig or like an inheritance, collaborative custody model, Superbacked, that's where you can have full security on it. And that's where you can pass it down much easier, like build it into an inheritance protocol. That's kind of the service that we have. We take that security, we plug it into the inheritance side of things. So it's better security. Plus you're going to be able to pass that down to your kids if something were to unexpectedly happen to you. Right. And I know we all think that it won't happen, but as Charlie Major once wrote a song about, called It Can't Happen to Me, sometimes it does. So you got to be ready for that. So yeah, that's what I would say. That's kind of like a first good step, honestly, is I would rather have like, if you're serious about it, put your 12 words in like a book. That's like your first step, and then just kind of go from there. And in a year from now, maybe you're ready for collaborative custody or Superbacked. The main thing that Superbacked has on like a collaborative custody model, like a CASA or a Unchained, is that we don't know how much Bitcoin you have. We don't hold a key to your Bitcoin. We don't even need to know your last name in this process. So you're taking kind of full self-sovereignty with it. It's more responsibility. That's kind of like the main drawback of it. But yeah, there's definitely pluses too, obviously. Hey, Nick, good morning. Jay says, everybody needs key holders eventually. You get to bless a few people. Yep. And that's kind of what you bake into your inheritance thing. There's like who it's going to. So it doesn't have to go through the courts, and not everybody has to find out how much Bitcoin you have. So let's, we'll leave it there. I think we'll leave it there for today. We're way, 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 way over time, but I was late today, so felt like I had to make it up to you. So from going to nothing prepared to an hour and 30 minutes, I'd say that's a pretty successful show today. So once again, on the way out here, I'm going to resist as hard as I can and as long as I can to have any sort of sponsors on the show. I want to be able to talk about what I want to talk about and not be owned by anybody. So if you feel like supporting the show, you can join the Living in the Future. We're actually going to do our proof of work course tomorrow. There's not going to be a show on YouTube. So you can join the Patreon if you want to show up for that tomorrow. And I'll put that in the chat here quickly. But if you do feel like supporting the show, you can send some sats to Arnie's wallet here. And it's been the people of this community who have been able to keep this going. Again, no sponsors. Nobody's paying me a salary. It's all community funded. So if you've been learning anything, if you've been getting any sort of value here, support in whatever way that you can. That's what I would say. So I put if you want to join, catch tomorrow's show, it's $5 a month, criminally underpriced, just like our Superbacked service. But that's okay. We want to leave the hands and the wealth in the hands of the people, and we're not in the business of ripping people off. So I hope everybody has an amazing Tuesday today. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you hopefully tomorrow, and if not, we'll see you on Thursday. Bye-bye.